What's going on? How is everybody? Back two
We're
o'clock.
back. We're rested.
Are we rested?
No,
Okay, I didn't
I'm
think so.
telling tall tales.
Okay, I didn't think so. I didn't think we were rested.
No,
I
I'm
thought,
telling tall tales.
yeah, I think you're still on a break, right?
Mentally, I'm still on a break, uh, but it's plenty of things to do. We got a lot of stuff to do.
We do, we do. How's everybody?
Did you guys miss
Arnold.
us while we were gone?
Hey Michelle, what's going on, Miss Phoenix? Thank you for coming back. I don't know. I don't know if they missed us or not. No, I
I
don't know.
missed everybody. It was good to have a little break, but I,
Oh,
I think I think we didn't have much of a break because the people that we met that were really really cool. I mean, everybody was celebrating something. So, uh, even though you wanted to rest, it was no rest for the weary.
so if you're wondering where we went, I'll show you where we went. My screen
I'm
on.
glad we made it back safely. That was my first trip on a plane since the pandemic anywhere. So to get on the plane and then go out of the country with COVID protocols, I shocked myself because I thought I was going to be more neurotic about it, but it wasn't that bad.
All right, so this is where we went. So you can see. You gotta share it. So it's here. Um, all inclusive. Here is the pictures, rooms.
Yes, Miss Phoenix 91. We did go to the beach. But since we live in Florida already, we live at the beach. So I'm glad that our beaches are better. So we were actually on the other, we live in Central Florida in the Tampa Bay area. And so I'm glad we were on the other side of the Gulf. And we're like, oh, our beaches are still better.
So this could give you an idea of the resort overall. It looks exactly like this. Like they're not fake pictures or nothing like that. You know
And
how
the resort, it
some
wasn't
places.
too big, it wasn't too small. You get about 10,000 steps a day. The food was okay. I mean, for all inclusive, I've had worse on the all inclusive situation. So they tried to do something. It was a lot of weddings, a lot of love going around.
I can
People
say
were
I did not.
celebrating all
I
different
did not.
types of occasions.
I did not get drunk after 5 shots of tequila. I felt nothing.
You know what? I did get a little bit of relaxation, but not too much. I'm a outside person, so the weather was pretty similar to Florida. It's the end of their rainy season there, so we got a little bit of rain. We got some sunshine. Wasn't too hot. We got some windy nights, but they have lemurs. Is that what we call them?
Hmm.
Out cold.
The lemurs wanted to join the fun.
Oh yeah, the lemurs at night they knew where they were going. They were like casing the halls, like they were making lefts and rights. I mean, it was a gang gang. It was amazing. I couldn't believe it.
Believe it.
It was crazy.
What's going on, C Casey? How you doing? RW, welcome back. Natasha, what's going on? Cisco Fly, saw you earlier. Appreciate you coming back, spending time with us. If you don't know who we are Women in Linux. You are a part of Women in Linux as well too. Thank you for being a part of us as we try to make as much money in tech as we possibly can. I don't understand all the other nonsense. I've been watching this stuff in these YouTube streets. I see the dilemma. I see the stuff. I can do nothing but shake my head at this point. Too much money to be made. So I see it. It's where I'm at. All right. So if you don't know who we are, you can hit us up on womeninlinux.org. If you want to connect with us, hit the connect link here. It jumps open. Put in your email address, It would then send you a invite to our Slack group where we share our thoughts, we share our time, we share whatever's going on in the industry, um, investments, career opportunities, recruiters, jobs. What are you looking for? Who's hiring? Who's not hiring? I mean, the list goes on. And so today was a little bit of a mix. We actually got a guest coming on. Should be around about 2:30, 2:45, if not sooner, to talk about investments. What does that look like? Well, what are we doing? What's going on in the world of VC funding as well as entrepreneurship? We're also going to talk about some jobs today, right? We talk about where these things lead to, but I just want to show you some jobs from a freelancer review and from a contractor review, and then maybe even I gotta wait. I gotta get in touch with Eric, Eric Coffee. He's coming on. He's gonna come on as well too. We're gonna talk about government contracting. We're gonna talk about the IT space. We're gonna talk about setting up your company. What should you be doing? How he already has all that stuff out there. I don't want to go over the same thing that he already has out there. I want to do a deeper dive into the IT side and setting up what you need, and possibly even uh, setting up creating your own software or your own um, company to solve a particular problem. We talked about that earlier with the space situation and so forth. So that's my angle from it. That's what I want to do. I don't want to talk about what he already talks about. But I think you can go to his website and find all of that. You can go to his YouTube channel and find all that. Let's do something different. Get your questions ready and so forth, right? Oh, and another side note, I'll be on Lab every day tomorrow, or is it today? I think it's tomorrow at 8, to talk about everything. Yeah, I'm gonna get into it. I'm not gonna be the popular person probably when I say what I gotta say, but I'm okay with that because a lot of people don't like to talk money. They like to talk about the money will come, and like it will, but why wait? It's my thing. why why wait when we can talk about where it's at right now? It's my thing. All right. And last but not least, if you want to, well, shop with us, hit all products, hit the shop, then hit all products. You know that we have products all throughout. There are other shirts and things that we do have, but again, you want to get the 5-year anniversary merch. it- you would like it. We worn some of that stuff and everything. What's going on, rock and roll, Dina? How you doing?
I
Uh,
got oh shoot, where's my cup? My cup is fine. My cup finally made it. I think I only ordered one. So this is the white one. Tam has a blue one.
yep, yep, nice
And our
cup.
shirts are unisex.
Yep,
So
they are.
they're nice and roomy and then nice and snug where you need them to be.
Yeah, anybody with this area up here, I don't want to say it on YouTube. If you're worried about comfort, you know how you get these unisex or even the women's cut shirt, and they, you know, women of this area knows what I'm talking about. Uh,
Chesty. Is that what it is? Is
I
it
don't.
chesty?
It's chesty. I didn't want to say chesty because chesty could be somebody that is a B cup could be like I'm chesty. I'm talking double D, triple D's, and up. I'm talking that. So I'm talking about. All right, so yeah, you hit here, hit all products. You see stuff. D just showed you a mug and so forth. And last but not least, you can donate with your time. You can donate money um, to everything that we do in Women in Linux actually feeds back to you. That's not something we keep or whatnot. So we just want to make sure that you all have that, right? Want to make sure you have that information. All right. tote bag, large and sturdy. The clutch purse is the quality. Yep, 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 yep. I can't complain. Like I got the tote the clutch. I had the clutch. Great. You know what it's great for when you on vacation and you going to do the little spa thing and you don't want to carry a big purse and you just pop that in there or whatnot. Turn it on the other side so the logo is facing you as you're walking. Oh, that's cute. Yeah, I know. Sitting by the pool. That's yep. I'm cute. Yeah, I know. Right. So that's what that's good at. Right. It's good for other things, but yeah, in doubt, know, you know, we want to say that. All right, so let's get cracking. So, what have I been seeing? All right, let's start over here. We can start with jobs, but let's start here. Why I brought this up? 1.5 million in social spending plan set aside. 500 million to support CISA initiative. So you remember that social spending, that ESG that I was talking about earlier? This is a continuation of that right here. We're talking about see Biden introduced a new draft framework of Build Better Act on Thursday, which prioritized focus on boosting spending for the nation's social safety net and combating climate change. $1.75 trillion bill used to be $3 trillion bill, right? And now this is dealing with cybersecurity and infrastructure and security agency. Like 100 million for improving cybersecurity of federal systems, 100 million for training workforce development, and 50 million for improving cloud security. Let me say this again. If you don't know where you're going, where we're going with Linux and DevSecOps, this is how it looks. 100 million for improving cybersecurity of federal systems, 100 million for training workforce development, and 50 million for improving cloud security, which comes up again when we talk about cloud security. We talk about Sandstock, or we talk about ISC Square. You can even look at CompTIA, but we come over here, hop down to the roadmap on sans.org, and hop over here to cloud security. And here's all the things when we're talking about cloud security, right? Essential public cloud, secure web apps, DevSecOps, automation DevSecOps, monitoring, detection, and containers and Kubernetes. Not only are we talking about cloud security, we're also talking about teaching when we're talking about under this. So, creating content or teaching content, right? Because you don't have to always create your own content. You can teach content of others as well too. And the other part of that is when we're talking about this, we're talking about these red team, blue team as well too. So we got a blue team here. You have the red team there. Also have the green team. There's also a gray and so forth and so on. But again, I am talking about where is the money, who are the companies, and where this is coming from, and what does this look like. Again, DevSecOps, we had a conversation the other night. We had this is going to get into my Lambda school thing that I'm going to talk about. But again, when we're talking about, I just moved the dev over and put sec in there. Just forget about DevOps and focus on DevSecOps. I'm just trying to tell you from that perspective of what people are looking for and where things are going, right? You can say shift left or you can just say DevSecOps, right? All right. So when I talk about this journey, again, I've shown this before. I showed this the other night. When you look at this roadmap here, I don't have my little tool like I have on the other one, but basically everything above this line here, everything above this line and over right here, starting with web server is the cutoff right here. It's all Linux. All this is Linux. All this is Linux. You heard about Rust going into the kernel for as secondary. Remember, it was always C and C plus plus, but now Rust in the Linux kernel. Why am I mentioning that? Because when we start talking about Rust in the Linux kernel, we're starting to get into talking about the whole AI and machine learning as we talk about this. So That's what I want to show. That's what I'm talking about. I'm gonna give you this. You can go read up on this. You can start looking at AI and machine learning from a DevSecOps perspective, not just learning about what AI and machine learning is, but from a perspective, right? I'm not telling you to go get your AI certificate or degree. You can, but I'm just saying, what does that look like from a DevSecOps perspective? Same way with IBM and quantum and so forth. What does that look like? How do you create the pipelines? How do you secure the data? How do you secure data in inside of the CPU as you're crunching the numbers? That gets into the confidential computing consortium. Uh, just I'm just putting things out there so you know how things are flowing, right? We talked about earlier about space building Wi-Fi and sending people to the mission to the moon and setting up Wi-Fi networks earlier. But then, how do you secure that, right? How do you secure something on the moon? How do you secure hardware? What does that look like? How do you stop people from getting signals and transmissions? What does that look like? What signals and transmissions am I talking about that gets into DSP, digital signal processing? Super huge when you're looking at it, but still falls back under the note of security. I can program in Python and JavaScript at an intermediate. What's the best route to take or get started in that knowledge with no CS background? I would say if you have Python, my next thing I would tell you is a few things. Learn data structures and algorithms, and learn about modern operating systems. That's going to take you a long way. Someone else is going to tell you to learn system design, and then the next thing I'll also tell you as well is, what do you want to do, right? What do you want to do? Do you want to use Python for web scraping? Do you want to build APIs? Do you want to, instead of building APIs, maybe you want to start looking at data engineering, or maybe you want to get into uh, well, that's web scraping, but yeah, I'll look at data engineering as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Your end game will definitely help you define your path.
yeah, so because there's a lot of things that you can do with Python because a lot of people use Python. My question would be is, where do you want to be? What area you want to be in? Do you want to be in the data engineering part? Do you want to be in the cybersecurity realm where you may be doing penetration testing and hacking? Do you want to be web scraping?
Yeah.
So
And what
from
moved
that's
you to take Python and JavaScript?
yeah.
Like
So
what how did you stumble upon Python and JavaScript? Did somebody tell you those were the programming languages and you're just like, I'm going to learn those now? What do I do?
yeah, and salute to you before the billions. We see you. Appreciate you for jumping on. These are just things I would have, questions I would have. Uh, my thought process uh, can go deep. Maybe sign up for a 101 on Calendly, so we can do a deeper dive, because I can think of 10 things off the top of my head that may not even make sense to you, but maybe doing a deeper dive into what I see. If you know Python and you know JavaScript, I would tell you to probably start learning Rust if you want to go down the AI and machine learning, but that's if you want to go that route. But again, do like I always tell everybody, go to Indeed, go to Dice or any of these online job sources, even LinkedIn, and type in Python. Just type in the word Python and see what you come back with, and then see what's centered around Python and what's centered around JavaScript to give you an idea of what your possibilities can be and what you can do. Right. So that would be my initial thoughts. All right. So the next thing we want to get into, that I wanted to show, is I have this article here. Right. So uh, we've had people come to us from boot camps all the time. I get it what boot camps give you. I understand what the boot camp give you, but here's a issue. Lambda School promised a fast, cheap path to a lucrative career. These leaked documents and former students cast doubt on that claim. They were basically in this article saying basically they lied about about the placements. They didn't learn anything. Um, the, a lot of the students felt gypped and they quit. I've seen these boot camps, different boot camps have this problem over and over again. I don't know I don't know. I didn't go to a boot camp, so I couldn't tell you what's going on in these boot camps. I just wanted you to be aware of this stuff. I'll post this link, and Dee can talk about this. And I mean, send you this link and go from there, and you all can check it out. But again, if you attended a boot camp and you haven't if and you haven't started building nothing, a portfolio, building out your understanding how to build out stuff in cloud, understanding Git ops and Git flow, understanding how to get an application tested from end to end and deployed and scale an application. Like those are the things I would think that you would just know. I don't know if Lambda got outdated a couple of years ago. I don't know. I don't know. But this article just came out. Like, let me see, October the 25th. That's an October the 25th article. So 5 days ago. All right, and rock and roll, Dina. You said I started learning Python because it was easy, but I enjoy building web apps, so I started JS. Also, thanks for you welcome. Do you know how to build out your apps and stuff in serverless? And understand what's going on underneath with serverless and how to build. I know you don't have to understand what's going on underneath serverless, but I would look at Python and JavaScript and building out apps using AWS serverless or Google Cloud Run, and I forget what it's called in Azure, and understand how to secure that. Understand how to secure serverless. What are the benefits, and then go from there. That would be something else I would look at too. All right. All right. Next thing up. Um, Here is I was looking at this because I've been seeing this coming up a lot lately. I looked at this before about using shipping containers to convert into pools, coffee, and tiny homes. The tiny homes aspect always interests me uh, for that. I don't know. I have to look and see because we live in Florida, and so since we live in Florida, what is the aspect of tiny homes and hurricanes?
And how does that have to be bolted down? I mean, I can see it, it's kind of, for me, kind of like,
Concrete.
our construction is block homes, so they use those blocks where they use in a lot of Caribbean places. But I can see it being sturdy if it is tied down correctly. I mean, you're in a box, is welded together. But I
Yeah,
mean, there's so many creative things they're doing with these shipping containers. But also, the the granola in me is just like, so what are the emissions from
there
these
you go with
things?
that granola. That's
What
back.
are, what are the emissions from these things? Like, is it safe to put water in here and be swimming? Like, do you have to have a coating in here to
Yeah,
be
you
swimming in a
do.
shipping
You
container?
do. You do. You do. Because some of the shipping containers contain bad harmful contaminants for us, and so
Yeah.
you do have to get that. There have been issues with the shipping containers that some people have issues and so forth. You do have to take care of. You do have to have passed some type of inspection for that.
I
There's been
mean, and
cases of
Kevin, he said he's been thinking of building a shipping container home office. I mean, there are so many nice little situations, but also even wood. People are just delivering modular mobile offices, mobile gyms right to your backyard.
I like the Home Depot play. Where's the little you call them she sheds, right?
Oh yeah, the she yes, she said
Yeah, but
she
I
said
was looking at one of these little. little sheds like this. They got some bigger ones, right? For to put my rack in, Kevin, so I can mine Bitcoin. And it's a couple of projects out there where you put solar panels on the top and on the side, and then that feeds into mining your Bitcoin as well too. But you can make that into your office. Well, I was looking at stuff like that, right? So I just want to put that out there. But that's also people that have jobs for that. All right. So this right here, building and funding the open web with Gitcoin. It was 48 minutes long. I had to go back and read it. If you're not familiar with Nader Dabbit, he is the one that he broke off and went on his own. He sold courses. He went to a company here recently. I forget which company he went to. But anyway, he wrote. I've talked about him before. But anyway, he sold courses. He made content and sold courses and made $400,000 off of selling the courses and the content. But Gitcoin, check this out. They got there in the open web. They were talking about this last night. Just getting to the whole web assembly and stuff that I was talking about earlier. And see, we did Lambda School. Oh, and so this is what I want to talk about, because everybody always asks me, how do you find jobs that are do where you can be a freelancer and so forth. You can go to Indeed, you can go to Upwork and whatnot. But if you look on Indeed, right, and I always filtered like 200, right, and up. Here's temporarily remote. They have some that's just remote, but you can look at the hourly wages, right, from 110 to 130, 120. I've seen some on here for 220 and whatnot. But again, when we're looking at this is how you can filter out on Indeed and go find jobs. Or you can work remotely, be a 1099 worker, DevOps consultant, DevSecOps, AI, machine learning, all these things that I keep talking about. You don't have to work for a company, you can work for yourself. I'm rushing for a reason. Reason
Because
is
it sounds like you're about to run out of breath.
got it. All right. All right. Are we ready backstage?
We're
I mean,
almost ready. We
almost
almost
ready.
ready.
Okay.
Almost ready. Oh, we're
Almost
ready.
ready.
We're ready. We're
Okay.
ready.
Okay.
We're
So
ready.
all right. So you all don't know this person. I know this person. You may have seen her on Twitter. You may have seen her on LinkedIn. She's a good friend of the family. When I say the
Yes.
family, that's women in Linux. She's a good friend of mine. We've been knowing each other for a long time now. I always give her my voice, like, "Hey, how you doing?" And she hates that. However, it's cool. So we're gonna give her a big shout out. We're gonna give her Atlanta ATL style welcome. What up, Shorty? What up, folk? Come to the stage.
I'm on the stage now.
You're on the
Yes,
stage
you are on
now.
the
Yeah.
stage. You
Hey.
are on the stage. And you guys actually, we all met because you and Tamika were on a panel. So this is a great example of how you meet your network at conferences.
Back together again.
I know,
Back,
right? The
back.
gang's all here.
Yep.
I love it. I love it. I'm glad to be here this morning. It's still morning here, almost morning still here in Los Angeles. I don't know where everyone is dialed in from, but glad to be here with Women in Linux. It's been a long time
I
since I
know.
shared a stage with Tamika, and so I'm glad to be here.
Yes. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you. Are you rested? Did you enjoy your morning? How was coffee?
Coffee was really good. Was talking to another investor this morning, so it was good. We tried not to talk about investing, but you know,
When it's your passion, it just seeps over. It's just like
doesn't
when
usually work
can
that
I
way.
ever escape it? Like never.
And look,
Yeah.
and you back on the stage to talk about it again. So you might as well just get ready.
Well,
So
throw it at me.
all right, so I'm gonna let you do your introduction because I know you switched a couple of times since we've met.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk. We could talk about where we met at, but that's so not important as to where you are now. So let's say where you are now, and what are
I
you doing now?
I actually disagree. I
Okay.
actually disagree. I think that having multiple pathways to a profession is really interesting. And I'm almost certain that many of us didn't come out of the womb being a software engineer or DevOps engineer or whatever. I certainly didn't come out of the womb as an executive in tech or even an investor now. My first career was actually as a middle school teacher in Los Angeles. And I like to tell people that I loved being a teacher. I taught for I was in the classroom for 5 years and I was out of the classroom for 2. I loved education. I loved the idea of being a teacher and an administrator, but I started teaching when I was super young. And so I didn't know what I was better at, right? I knew that I was good at teaching. I knew that I loved it, but I didn't know if I was better at something else. And because I started out so young, I figured, why don't I try something else? And if I don't like it, I fail, I fall, I can go back to teaching. Certainly teaching is one of those professions that there's always a need for really great teachers. And so I had no idea what that next thing was, but I had a little bit of sort of fire under me to try something new. I landed in a tech company that actually was an ed tech company. And so I started out as a trainer. That was the bridge, right? The bridge was had been a teacher, and then I went to work for this ed tech company that sold a product into schools that most of the user base was teachers. And so I started there and I worked my way up. Eventually working with our engineers, building out tech support teams, building and growing the company. In that first company I was in, so the role I started was a trainer. The last role that I had in that first company was interim CEO. That took me about 5 years. Then I and one other person splintered from that company. We took a portion of the business and the team, and I was the co-founding COO of that second company, which was also in the similar content management space. We had our own proprietary CMS, and we had to start over essentially. And I think the beauty of that was that it was a crazy time, but we realized like the things that we could do if we were not so encumbered by someone saying we couldn't do it. And it was an exciting time in that second company with a lot of failures like we thought we had a backup of our database and we didn't. And so one time it failed. And we had a copy, but the copy was from like the 2 days before. So imagine having to roll back everyone's website for 2 days prior, and that is not something it's easy to communicate to thousands of customers across the country. So there's a lot of, certainly war stories, but I learned a lot about building out solid teams, whether it was engineering, product, and really rooting myself in like, what does it mean to be a really great operational leader and wanting to keep and build really great teams. And it's just really centered, I think, for me because I was a teacher. So I always was thinking about, I always thought that my students, while they were my students, I believe they were just small humans, right? And I like to think that adults are just much bigger humans. That's all. Um, and so I spent almost 10 years or so being an operations and executive in the tech space. I ventured out on my own for a while. I got lured into another company leading strategy and expansion for a mobility company, which I'd never done before. Spent 4 years helping expand that company. When I joined them, we were only in one state, California. And now today that company is in 11 states. So I spent, prior to the pandemic, obviously, all my time on the road, and getting us to the point where we could expand. And obviously now that company has expanded. The one thing I realized is obviously through this arc of my professional journey was that there was just not a lot of people that looked like me in the positions that I was holding. And I wanted to do something about it. So in particular, over this last 2 years, I had a lot of time to think about like what happens at the investor stage, who gets checks in, who doesn't get checks, what companies do we think can value or have value. And I started making some angel investments, started being really more vocal than I had been on the investor side. I'd always been really vocal on creating more inclusive, a more inclusive workforce, within tech as a whole. But then, the last couple of years, it was like more vocal on the investor side too. So I just started making a lot of investments, started pooling capital as well, of other people's money. And before you know it, I had millions of dollars under management that I had deployed. And people said, well, it just makes sense for you to become an investor now. And recently, at the end of the summer, I took a role where I'm a full-time investor now. It's been a really exciting place. And so, Tamika, this is why I say, that sort of telling that story, is important to me because, what I realize is that, like, there's a greenfield opportunity. But what I know to be true is that while I believe that genius is equally spread across zip codes, opportunity is not. And it is my job to figure out where sort of those access points are. And if I have access to it, it's my job to remove those barriers so that more people have access to that opportunity. And this new lane that I'm sort of living and breathing in now is just one of those places where I thought there's too many walls, there's too many barriers. And once I got in, and on the other side, I realized that, those people weren't really any smarter than me, that I could do it as well. And so here I find myself being a partner in a new fund, and I continue to deploy capital, myself as an individual, and pooling other people's money as well. So that's my story that I'm sticking to, Tamika.
That's fine, but
That's a great story. It's a great,
I,
great
I,
story.
I was actually talking about when we were on the panel. I appreciate you,
Yeah.
for sharing the giving the visual. Let me say
Yeah.
it that way, giving the visual of that.
Oh, so
Now,
I should tell you so you guys were talking about Lambda, right? Earlier,
Mhm.
I was listening, and then my first angel check is in a coding boot camp that's based here in Los Angeles. It is led by a husband and wife team. They're Latino, Sabio boot camp. And, I made my first angel investment into them, but I had known them since their first class, their first cohort. I went to their first cohort's graduation that they hosted at a restaurant. And I
Wow.
watched them grow and saw like where their fellows were going, and their ability to really build out and center building out an inclusive workforce. And so it's funny that you guys are talking about Lambda, and my first investment was into a coding boot camp. And I have now several investments. Tamika knows this, in managed services and other DevOps type of products and services as well. I can get really like sort of in the nitty gritty. Like I can say I've invested in some pretty awesome, companies that people recognize their name. And then there are companies that I've invested in that you don't recognize their name, but they are, that technology is used in a lot of companies. It's just not super sexy. And I find myself more attracted to the non-sexy, but deeply important services and software that engineers desperately need.
well, give us one, because I'm sure people are gonna want to know at least one.
I mean, you said it was super sexy,
Yeah,
not
super.
sexy.
No, so I'm saying,
It piques interest.
the non-sexy stuff.
Yeah, I like the non-sexy stuff. Give me the
Me too.
non-sexy.
The non-sexy stuff. So I invested in a company called Finix. Finix is a fintech company. They are going after a huge market is that's sort of like a payment facilitator. So when you swipe your credit card, there's all these things. It just doesn't go from your bank to that merchant. There's a couple of different layers that passes through, and guess what? Those things that it passes through, they get a cut of it, right? They get a few basis points, a few cents on every swipe. So we can imagine like everybody is using, debit cards. Everyone is using, not everyone, but lots of people are using debit cards. Lots of people are using credit cards. And so there's all these sort of in between layers. And Richie Cerna had worked at a fintech company, and that company had been acquired by Stripe. And he just sort of looked at all the sort of non-sexy stuff and then decided to build his own company in a space that largely needed to be disrupted, because there were an old guard of tech companies, WorldPay and others, that essentially were the de facto payment facilitator or PayFac. And so Richie essentially goes to, let's say, imagine you are Shopify. So Shopify is a really great example. Shopify makes it easy. Let's say if I have some kind of like shea butter cream that I want to sell, right? I've got a following. I decide to build a Shopify storefront. Great. I can take payments. You can do the inventory, all that. And then I subscribe to Shopify. Well, guess what? Shopify is really exciting, right? And then you pay a subscription to Shopify. And so you think, wow, Shopify is great. And then when you look at their balance sheet and you look at where they're making their money, guess where they're making their money? The most money, the company's profitable. It's an amazing company. They are making more money in the payment facilitating, right? The payback fees, because they built it themselves, than they do in the total amount of subscriptions.
And it depends on what products you sell. Until I got into the industry, because I've invested in a family's business, and she sells adult toys, and Shopify won't even be the merchant. She had to get a third party merchant to sell those toys, because it was the, they don't say it's the sex industry, but they put like another label on it. So a lot of people's products, Shopify won't even, you can't even use their payment portal.
Right. So I think that, that's when you like peel, you sort of peel through Shopify's balance sheet and their P&L, you start seeing where they're actually making significant amounts of revenue. Then you go, oh my goodness, they're making all this money in the payback stuff.
Oh, and their loans.
It's just super awesome. And so that's one company I've invested in. I invested in this other company, Synctera. Synctera won't become a household name either, like Phoenix won't become a household name. But Synctera, basically, the founder of Synctera had been the head of Uber Money. He had also been leading the charge with Google Pay. And what he realized is, as all these things that he was doing in his previous companies, was that smaller banks. So if you're a non-Wells Fargo, Chase, like anybody who's like not a part of those Bank of America, big brand banks, your credit unions, your CDFIs, your community banks, largely are under-resourced and understaffed when it comes to tech skills and like a tech team. And they just don't make a ton of money. In the banking industry, you don't make a ton of money on deposits. It isn't, that's not where you make your money. And so what he saw was a huge gap in those what we would consider to be community banks or small banks, single standalone credit unions, or maybe they have two or three, that they lacked that engineering and the ability to offer the services that they could make substantial more money from. But because they couldn't build the technology, they couldn't get there. So you've got all of these like neobanks, you've got all of the new fintech seems to be like the trend and the hot things to invest in. Is super hot, so it seems super sexy. And so essentially, the Bank of Americas and all those, they have enough money, they can invest and have a whole entire thousands of engineers. these smaller banks cannot do that. And so what Synctera does is they basically bring that technology to the community banks and basically operate as a middle layer so that those community banks can offer all of these new fintech services, whether it's KYC, AML, automatic depositing from your app, all of those kinds of things. So many of us have more than one bank. I have a credit union, I bank with Chase, I bank with Bank of America, all those things. But my credit union, the technology, when I go into the website for my credit union, it's like, it feels like it's stuck in the 1980s or whatever, right? But you go to Bank of America and it's much easier, and Chase, it's much more robust. And so that's Synctera is that kind of that company that offers and supports those community banks to be able to tap into now all of these new fintech companies, which is exciting. So those are some of the investments that I've made that are, I would consider to be, will never become a household name and not necessarily sexy, but definitely, need it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I know my credit union is a nonprofit. And
Yeah,
you see new offerings and they try to keep up, but the more technology they get, more savvy, the more offerings they're able to bring the community as
that's
far
right.
as financial wise. Like,
That's
because
right.
a lot of credit unions, they're there to help the community, but a lot of that stuff is a paper. And
Yeah.
it's just like,
Or you
well,
got
this
to go into
community
the
is not
branch.
a paper community.
Right. Right.
Right. But they
Right.
can't expand those offerings
Mhm.
without, being out there. So
Right.
definitely
Right.
want to look into
And
Synctera.
and we want to also give a shout out to Savage Scientists. Thank you for your donation there, $5.43. We appreciate it. Everything counts. That is that would get me a nice little meal at Cracker Barrel. I'm just playing. It all goes back to the community. We actually don't spend anything out of Women in Linux unless
Like they
we're
say in church, it goes to the building fund.
the building fund.
The building fund. So thank
We
you.
appreciate you for listening.
Mhm.
Now, I do have some questions. I'm sure other people have questions too, but I'm gonna get rolling with my questions. So, we talk about in Women in Linux, hey, make your money in tech, and you and I have spoken
Mhm.
about this. Make your money in tech, and then go build a fund, or go put your money into something else, or go do something with it so that
Mhm.
it makes money. So, from your perspective right now across the landscape, uh, where would you be making investments at if you had 10,000 sitting aside right now?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I am not a financial planner, so don't take this as like,
Disclaimer.
advice. Yeah, this is definitely a disclaimer. I think that the public markets, in all honesty, I think the public markets offer a lot of opportunity for people to make money. And if you have $10,000, right, to invest, and I think the best thing that you can do, especially if you're a novice and you're just getting started, is to think about all the products, the things that you cannot live without today. And really think about like why you can't live without those things, right? What are the products and services that you use every month, every day without thinking about, right? And then follow those companies, follow those people or those entities that create those services or those products that you purchase all the time, and watch them, right? Is it increasing, is it decreasing? And think about, even over the last 2 years, what about you and your purchasing habits have shifted and changed, right? What about your how you go about your life has shifted and changed? So as an example, um, how many of you think about how many of you have started using telehealth services versus going into a doctor. Lots of people had to transition to telehealth services, so meeting virtually with a doctor as opposed to like making the appointment and going and waiting for 40 minutes to an hour in the waiting room, and then another 30 minutes in the actual room waiting for the doctor to get to you. So think about that. Like, do we think that's changing? Part of the sort of, obviously we know why we had to switch to telehealth services, but then what we realized, and data shows, that more people were going to the doctor and being seen because they had the ability to tap into telehealth services, right? And so do we believe that there's going to be a contraction, right, in terms of people going back to in person, or will people feel more inclined to continue to do telehealth services? So one, I would, like I said, I would reiterate, what are the things that you purchase all the time without thinking about? What are the services that you use all the time without thinking about? Who are those companies? What is behind that, whether from a technology standpoint or what have you? And then what has shifted over the last couple of years that you have an inkling that, I like to say that whatever was normal before, people have talked about, like, we should go back to normal, go back to pre-pandemic. Well, what does that even mean? Right. And some things that we recognize just really was a handicap, right? We said that, you had to go to the doctor, right? Insurance companies and regulators said, in order to get a doctor to be reimbursed, they have to physically be in the office with you to diagnose you, right? And now once we realize, well, the doctor can likely diagnose some things, right, without being with you in person, but can do it over a video. You could take a picture of something, upload it, and the regulator or the insurance company says, yeah, that's fine. And now you have the ability to continue to bill in the exact same way. So think about those shifts. Whatever was normal before, people said, no, you had to go to the doctor in person to get reimbursed. And now we're like, well, no, you don't have to be. And so that's here to stay. Right. So do we see that telehealth and other sort of complementary services that can be bolted onto that will expand? And so think about who's in that telehealth space, who are the biggest players that potentially have an advantage to be able to scale and do that, but who are some of the earlier new entrants, right, who are going after that space? So you think about what's in the public market, what's in the public space, what are you using already, the companies that you already are buying into because you buy their products, Amazon, etc., Instacart, all of those things. What behaviors shifted for you over the last few years, and where there are gaps that the incumbents haven't been able to move quick enough. And then so if you want to start thinking about, I want to start angel investing, right, you move beyond sort of those early and making investments in the public markets. Then you start thinking, I'm not happy with, let's say, how X does Y, right? And now you learn that there's this Y company that's going after that X problem, right? So you can start following them, figuring out, and then they might do equity crowdfunding. That company might open it up on Angel List, right? So those are the kinds of things that you can inch to, towards thinking about, how would I go about spending this 10K, right? Do I put some of it into the public markets, and then maybe potentially do I reserve some of that money to maybe hold for a potential early investment, whether through crowdfunding in a company that I've been following or get to know, or through some other kind of channel like Angel List.
Right. So a quick question on the Angel List, because I haven't looked at Angel List in a while. Is there a need for one to be an accredited investor in order to do that one on Angel List, or is it just like, hey, here's your money, here's my money, take it and run with it?
Very great question. So we know that the SEC, is a rule maker when it comes to what is an accredited investor. So legally, SEC says an accredited investor is someone who makes at minimum $200,000 over the last 2 consecutive years. Okay. Or you have at minimum $1 million of net worth that does not include your primary residence. Or you are a founder in a company and your company is worth X millions of dollars, even if it's not liquid, right? So those are like how the SEC, or I shouldn't, no quotes around it, how the SEC determines what an accredited investor is. So on AngelList or some other platforms that are out there that exist, yes, you have to attest that you are an accredited investor.
Yep.
That's what I'm going to say. However, well, I wouldn't say however. So you attest to being an accredited investor. You say, yep, I meet that. I meet one of these qualifications. And then, I've been invited to deals where the minimum check size. So I think, so once people hear that, then they go, well, okay, an accredited investor. And then you have to start thinking, well, what's the minimum check size that I have to have in order to be able to put into a deal? And what oftentimes surprises people to find out that sometimes the minimum check size, even for an accredited investor, is only $1,000. $1,000. So the SEC is saying, hey, you need to make all this money, or you need to be worth this net worth. But a deal could give you could get access to a deal for a minimum of $1,000. I was literally just sent to AngelList link this morning that the minimum check size is $1,000. I have made small bets into founders that I really believe in, or I think are super ambitious. I'm not quite sure about the market, but the minimum check size is $1,000 or $1,500, right? Sometimes I spend more than that in a week on random stuff, right? I don't know, like you add it all up. So sometimes I've made small bets like that just just to back up founder and ambitious founder. So yes, there is this accredited investor, and then there's also there's other avenues for non-accredited people to make investments. Again, that's like through crowdfunding. You can join things like Republic and other platforms that now exist that open it up to more crowdfunding for both accredited investors and non-accredited investors.
Now you were saying that these ambitious founders, are they your friends that you're like, man, I want to invest in you, or you just it's people that you've been following?
It's not, yeah, that's a great question. No, not necessarily friends.
Okay.
Here in LA, I am really plugged in and super engaged in the tech ecosystem. So you would find me, just on Wednesday, it was done virtual, but I was a judge for a pitch competition. I am pretty vocal and pretty visible in this ecosystem. So a lot of founders hit me up, or I meet pre-pandemic would meet in person, or all those kinds of things. Sometimes it's like founders, that I've known, I've mentored, I've coached, I've advised over years or months, really sort of got into and dug into their product, their model, how passionate they were, what they were doing, how they were building, how open they were to feedback. I think that's if I have my investor hat on, like how open are they to feedback, constructive criticism? If they're totally no, I got this, I don't need this, or they come off like arrogant, then, I think, maybe they don't need my help. Right. And so there's a balance of, again, I'll say this, the personal check that I can cut to a company is going to be relatively small, right? I'm not personally cutting $50,000, $100,000 checks. But what I say is this, that while my check, individual check, not my institutional investing as, an investor out of a fund now, but as an individual cutting a direct check into a company is going to be small. But my ability, I want my operational lens, my relationships, my connections, my deep strategy and business development sort of expertise to outweigh the actual physical check that I can write to them. So although I only might write a $5,000 check, I'm going to lean into helping them, make a connection to another institutional investor. I'm going to lean into helping them connect with a potential customer. I'm going to connect them to a future partner. I'm going to, the CEO is going to say, can you talk to the head of my BD team? Can you talk to my head of my government relations team? And I'm going to say yes to all those things. So I'm getting access to being able to help that company grow. And so that's how I look at it. Like I always say, like, how can I be of service to you outside of me writing a check
Yeah.
to you?
Your
And if they're
intellectual
receptive to
capital.
that, right? They're
Yeah.
receptive in that, then that like feels good. And that really, because that's the mindset that I have as an investor. Like, what else can I do for this company just outside of just writing them a check?
Yeah.
Right. And I think another thing to add to that, and credit an investor, if you are married, I think it's 300,000 if
Mm-hmm.
you are married. And then I think the other part that I saw is, if you scroll down on, I think, Investopedia at the very, very bottom, which some people try to do, is they go after their Series 65 and try to pass that
Yeah,
exam.
you can. Yeah, so you could basically go have a Series 65 license, and that, because basically it says how to invest, right? And
Hmm.
you are the SEC has determined that they believe, and I don't know why, they believe that people who make over that kind of money or have that kind of license is better, understands better the risk involved in investing in a private company. It's
Right.
weird because we don't stop people from walking into a casino and gambling away $100,000 or $50,000. We don't stop anyone from buying lotto tickets every day of their lives, right? We these are things that we don't do, right? And yet, in order to get into a access and an opportunity to invest in a private company that you believe in, that you likely have expertise in, right? Like if you're an engineer or you're, you know, deeply into DevOps, like you have an advantage whether you make over $200,000 or not.
Mhm.
Fundamentally, you understand the problem more that DevOps company is solving for than anybody else who finds himself on that cap table. So why shouldn't you be given that opportunity to invest in a company where you deeply understand the problem and you deeply understand the tool or the solution that they're building? It makes
Mm,
sense to me. But listen, I think there should be guardrails for sure, right? I
mhm.
think there should be guardrails to protect people from themselves. I think that some things can be um, you know overzealous in some ways, and I think arguably archaic and are actually designed to keep more people out than to protect people.
Right.
And so we have to balance what that is, right? Are we really truly protecting people, or are we building a walled garden for only a few?
Yeah, yeah, I know my mom is an accredited investor in the casinos.
But I mean, but what's crazy about that is that the government gets their cut off the top. So there's no transaction that goes through the casino without them knowing about it. So people go to the casino and already say, well, if I win this much, this is how much I'm coming home with.
Mhm.
And so the gamble, like you said, if you deeply know about something and the gamble and the access to it, like you
Mhm.
can walk into any casino right now, but to go and kind of dig into a angel list and find these companies or a fund rise or these type of companies where you can get a return. I have friends that ask me, well, you're in real estate, where do you think I should go? I was like, well, this is not, you know flip property one-on-one. I don't have that for you, but I do know of a couple of vehicles that you can put some money into
Mhm.
and you can watch it grow and you can reinvest that money and maybe double your money or maybe triple your money. But that way, I'm not responsible for your money with any deal that I want to get into and have to babysit that. Like, here
Mhm.
are some vehicles. I'm more then happy to give you some information to read. But a lot of times we feel people don't read the information.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
they don't sit and read the information, and it's just like, how can I take these twos and fews? Because I think a big thing that you said is my personal checks aren't that big. But what I can bring to the table and what I feel about this particular project is I put the time and energy to know about it, and what I can deliver to that. And
Right.
if that company is willing to take that, because who wants to be bothered with um the know-it-all company? Because it's kind of like, I like we watch Shark Tank and The Profit and those type of shows. And Marcus Lemonis is just like, they always say, well, why am I here if you have it all together? Like, why is your hand out if you have it all together? And I know we don't have it all together. And that's why we have people like you come on and just let us know, and open our eyes and expose these things that sometimes our mind doesn't capture. It always makes it, when you say an investor, you always think, man, that's such a big goal. That's something. But if you tithe in church, you're investing in your community, you're investing in your church.
I'm a
Right.
broke
That's
college
a
student.
commitment.
I'm a broke college student. I'm not investing in anything.
We know. We have a nonprofit. Women in
Yeah,
Learning
I
is
get
a
it.
nonprofit, and we always have this conversation. Like, we could have became a for-profit company 5 years ago, but what we want to deliver to the masses outweighs what that could have been for profit wise, because we would have lost a lot of our own um, intellectual property when it came to what we wanted to deliver, how nimble we wanted to deliver that, and to see what the community really needs. And our um, the age range has shifted a little bit, even though we still have people in college, career changers, people that are getting in the field. I mean, to hear Kiana say, I was a middle school teacher and now I'm an investor. I've been a CEO. I've been a COO. That is ginormous for some of the people that are just like, oh, I work for the bank and I'm new to tech. It's just like, this
I
is
think we should I don't think we should minimize
at
like that
all.
experience, because I'm bringing all those things with me. And I think someone asked, like, how much information do I have
Mhm.
in advance about a product or a service? You know, one thing that I think is really important for an investor to do is to figure out what is their lane of genius, right? What is it that they know deeply about, right? What is your expertise in? And then many VC funds basically built their thesis around that team of people who are actually going to uh, invest capital. And so they don't say we're going to invest in everything, like, because we don't know everything. Like, how do you pull apart a company that you don't even know about their product, their service? You don't have any personal experience. Either you worked in a company that did something similar, you were an engineer, you did this, you worked in a bank, whatever it is, like, um and so, like, you should be pretty focused and laser into like a set or a core set of things. So because I started my tech career in the SaaS space, like, I feel confident about SaaS models, right? I
Mhm.
understand, like, SaaS models that also have a tie of a service to them, right? What does it take to implement software, right? There's some level of hands-on. It's not just like enter your credit card and it's ready to go, right? There's some sort of implementation or development that needs to happen, and then it's kind of like turnkey, right? And then you might also have a tech support or support team that helps people once they sort of off to the races. But there's so a SaaS, a business I feel confident about because I lived and breathed it for 10 years, right?
Mhm.
Specifically a SaaS business that's B2B, I feel really confident about because that is where I spent the bulk of my tech professional career in. Then I was a teacher, and I was in ed tech. So when you start thinking about, okay, what is
Yes.
my lane of genius? what do I know about? I spent enormous time with engineers, right? Building out these products. I also paid the bills for like the subscriptions that we were subscribing to, all the tools that we needed ourselves, from HR platforms to what developers needed, all of those things with our customer support. Like, we had this mindset we could build some things, we could, like, become a client to someone else or a customer to someone else. So I feel really good about SaaS models that is out of ed tech, that isn't B2B, or what have you, because I have been a customer and paid the bills. So I start thinking about that. But then also, you know, I'm really just excited about some spaces too, right? That I don't necessarily have experience in. And I think that's the beauty of it too. I just personally like some spaces, some opportunities, because I also want to learn. I think that we're on the frontier of a lot of different things, and I just think that there needs to be more people who are curious like me, who look like me, who sound like me, who have a name like me, who is interested and curious about these things, who are willing to sit down with engineers and others to like figure out and unpack these things. Can I get really excited about something even if I don't have a lot of experience? Yeah, totally, right? So some things I know a lot about, and then some things I don't know much about. Like, there's one company that I'm looking at now, and they're totally in the creative space, right? Well, they're in the creator space. So like all the micro influencers. And then when this founder broke down, like, on average, how much even micro influencers make, right? Monthly. And that's just the micro influencers, not the mega influencers that we see. And so basically he's built out a fintech product and platform for these creators, whether you're a YouTuber, whether you're an independent music artist. So that is exciting to me. Do I know about like influencers? No. Do I know about like creators and YouTube and all that kind of stuff? No. But when I peer into, like, again, how he's making money, how it's growing, right? It's super exciting. And I'm just like, this is amazing. And then I start peering into like how he's currently making revenue. So one thing you'll have to know about me as an investor, I am really, really excited about post-revenue startups. People who already have found product market fit, companies that have already built a product that customers love and that are willing to pay for it. And so those are the things that really get me excited, revenue. And so even though I didn't know about the business of the influencer space, like investing in this founder, now I'm going to learn more about that space, right? And he has built a SaaS, but he doesn't make most of his money actually from the SaaS platform. He made it in some fees. By providing additional services, which again is really exciting. It makes it really sticky. So I start thinking about competitive landscape. How sticky is it? Is it easy for people to switch to other things, right? So if it's something that has a very high switching cost, right? So if you're a engineering team and you're going to move from GitHub to GitLab, I got to ask why, right? Because most people would say it's really sticky. So if you're going to make that switch, then and the cost to switch is high, there still must be, if you decide that you're still going to switch, there's something that GitLab, or if it's the other way, GitHub offers that the other can't. And so it's worth it, right? So you start thinking about all of these unique things that you can actually apply to multiple sort of industries and spaces. And so you are repetitive in asking those questions. How sticky is it? Right? What is the, the ARR, the annual reoccurring revenue? What is the percentage, and how often do people log in? How many minutes are they spending? Right? Like, all these kinds of things that are very like, as an investor, you have to like be willing to ask those kinds of questions and dig in on, like I said, on spaces that but also on spaces that you don't know.
To add to that, for the spaces that you were just talking, that particular space that you're talking about, the product that he's making, I can give you a different view on that. So, and when I go to the car dealership, right? And I'm talking to the general manager, who we're friends, and we're talking about what he's seeing with people coming in who are YouTubers, who are influencers, and so forth. The bank doesn't know how to fund them for the car.
Guess what? Guess what? This is what he knows.
Right.
So this is what he's tapping into.
Yep.
He's literally giving the creators the way to be able to go to the bank, to
Mm-hmm.
be able to go and buy a home. Some of them make hundreds
Yes.
of thousands of dollars, but like it's all as an independent contractor and whatever
Yeah.
else. And so
Yeah.
he's actually now providing them with the P&L and all the things that they need to be able to go to a bank. And now it makes sense for a bank or a lender of some kind to give them money to buy
Yeah.
it, purchase a home or a car or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The banks, they don't understand that money
Mm-hmm.
process, and they don't understand um, how that sustains over time
Right.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't understand the different revenue streams that
That's
actually
right.
could come
Mhm.
out of that. So in this particular case, what the guy ended up, the long story short, the guy sells um dog items, uh, treats, and costumes and whatnot. But the
People love
guy,
their pets, and they
yeah,
are, that's another space that I've looked at.
the
That space is just anything that has anything related to pets, grooming,
yeah,
boarding, training, treats, costumes, you name it, health insurance. It is crazy.
put
The
like this,
pamp, we call them pamper pooches. The pamper pooch
the
market
guy, the
I
is
guy,
tell
huge.
all the time, I only have plants. I have no kids and I have no pets, just plants.
yeah,
But
the guy
also people are investing a lot in plants too. So
implant.
there you go.
Yeah, but the
Yes,
guy makes over 300K a month, and so what he ended up having to do was he had to, for the bank, he had to go back and show 2 years. This is just to buy a car. You
that's
normally don't
crazy.
have to go back 2 years to buy a car. He had to go back 2 years to show, because again, they don't know how to take people who have income like that. So it becomes a burden and it becomes
Sounds
a
like you need
hassle.
to invest in this company that I'm getting ready to invest in then, Tamika.
Right.
Because
I'm just like, where
you
is it?
understand the problem. And that's exactly what he's a former entertainment lawyer. But he basically understood that that is exactly the problem that these influencers actually have. It isn't that they actually don't have money. They actually have
Hmm.
lots of money and he can predict, and he's got a lot of algorithms to show like how much on average they will be making monthly, and he can
Hmm.
see actually how much they're making monthly and then can provide them micro advances as well
Hmm.
based on all of those streams and all of the things that they're doing across the board. So it's really exciting, but again, I didn't know this.
Yeah,
i
so
i had
Send
traditional
it,
banks,
send
they're
it
high
over.
risk. It's high. I mean, think what you have to do when you're self-employed, all of the paper
Mhm.
that you have to bring to the table so that they can, secure your collateral. It's just like, oh my gosh, buying a home as a self-employed person. And I've been in the mortgage industry before, and so I know where we
almost
came from.
impossible.
And I'm just like, it's not credit based anymore. You have to bring in your documents and you
Hmm.
have to get these documents in. And if you don't have those, not also the money part, but the age of a lot of these influencers. A lot of the people that are the underwriters that are underwriting these loans are just like, I can't believe this person. So you're dealing with a person
Hmm.
who can't get over that much money because they've never seen it on paper in their life. So now they're going to put up all of these roadblocks so that you won't get a car that you can pay for in cash.
Yeah.
Yep, and it's the same way with buying your car in your business name as well too. If you're uh I was just looking at another car to buy under a business name, and because of this particular bank, they want you to have the business uh has to have for the last 3 years have brought in over $100,000 a year for the business,
Mhm.
and then they want to see what your potential is going to be going forward,
Mhm.
and then they want to know, of course, what you're going to use this car for as a business, and all the other things associated with that.
Right.
But it was three main things that you had to certify for in order to get it under a business for this particular dealership. Now, when I go to another dealership, a different dealership, just not a high end car, they didn't give two rats about
Hmm.
what we had in business. It was just like, hey, you're gonna put this money down and this is what we're gonna charge you and buy, and it was done in 5 minutes. The other ones, they take a week. If you're not the person guarantor, excuse me, we're gonna start getting into fleets. If you want to buy a fleet, what does that look like? That's why it's so interesting with Tesla buying, well, not Tesla, but Hertz getting the 500,000.
Hmm.
Uber is doing 50,000 of those as well too, for their people. Well, you just got to think about how much money and how much time they have had in the industry, where somebody who's the low man on the totem pole like me that wants to get a fleet and rent, I have to have my business. Let me clarify that. My business has had to have this
Yeah.
longevity in order to have that. But you don't know what I make on my YouTube and
Mhm.
other streams of income that support that business, that I could do those things. So
Yep.
Those
it's those.
barriers that you were talking about, like, you until you dig in it. And then a lot of the gurus on YouTube make you think like it's so easy, and it's just like, you guys are scammers. Like, it doesn't happen that way. But in order to really know, this is how they're making money. But in order to know, you have to do your research. And me and Tam, we're like looking at these videos like,
That's a lot.
who's going to call them out? Somebody. And it's been a lot of videos that have been uncovered where the influencer's like, okay, so I didn't know I was frauding. I didn't know I was being
Yeah,
a
that's a lot
scammer.
of those out there.
Like,
Mm.
you
So
can't do that.
so here's a question for you. All right, so I want to create a fund.
Hmm.
I'm starting from scratch.
Ooh.
I'm starting from scratch. I know from research, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on my research. If I wanted to do a private equity fund and not get back a percentage on that fund, and not get back a percentage, not my 2%, I don't have to go and take my Series 65. But if I do want to get back a percentage, I have to go take my Series 65 and pass the exam. True or false?
False. There's tons of VCs and private equity people that don't have a series, that don't have those.
Okay.
Um, yeah, no. And then so I think like and because I don't have it, the setting up a fund, so it's this idea of like setting up a fund, like on paper, relatively easy. Um, but setting up a fund essentially requires you to fundraise. And on
Mhm.
average, I have friends on average who spend roughly about 3 years to fundraise that fund. And that can go from anywhere from like a $10 million fund to over $100 million fund. So the first step is whether or not you believe you will get and have the ability to raise capital from other people that you've convinced or believe that you have the ability to find, attract high growth companies, or the companies that have the potential to become high growth companies, and you can perform and out index, the vast majority of other investors, right? So, to what we would typically call this in that space is an emerging fund manager, someone who's never been a fund manager before, right? I am considered emerging fund manager. And it takes a lot of time, a lot of relationships to basically get people to give you money, right?
Okay.
Because they have to believe that, again, like I said, that you have access to high quality deals, that you um will have the not just intuition, but you have the insight and the expertise and the ability to weigh through the BS, and that you are going to be able to outperform or perform on par with some of the best VC funds in terms of returns on capital, right? So you have people who have on paper returns, but no actual liquid return yet. So let's say you had invested in Uber early on. Now you have a liquid. So every time Uber raised capital, post the time that you gave them money, let's say you invested in Uber at the seed round, then they went to A, and then B, and then C, and then D, and then E, and then F, and then there was no F. They decided to go public and IPO. Every single time they raised more capital, right, their valuation got bigger and bigger. That means your money that you originally put in keeps on getting bigger and bigger, even though probably every single time you're being diluted, right? But the reality is you want it to dilute in a way that you want it to the valuation to blow up so much that the dilution doesn't hurt you that much at all, right? So if you were early, if you were early check in, let's say you were an early investor into Uber, let's say $25,000, your stake in Uber probably, 7, 8, 10 years later, whenever they went public, was probably now worth $30 million. That's a great return on a $25,000 check that you basically parked in Uber early on.
Mm-hmm.
Even given all their challenges, and then they went public and at a certain valuation, and you just suddenly became a millionaire. Right now, obviously, these unicorns aren't, they're not everywhere, right? Everyone isn't going to be, this type of company. And in fact, the liquidity doesn't necessarily have to come from the public market. You could be acquired by someone. So I invested in a company. Well, I know a founder who had a company. He was invested in like some VCs and then private equity. And then he sold his last company to Rackspace for like $2.2 billion. So suddenly, he's a unicorn. Was in the managed services space, sold it to Rackspace. Rackspace is a more widely known name, but Rackspace came along and bought them for $2 billion. If you were an early investor in that company, right, and you rode that wave, man, you made a lot of money, right? You made a lot of money. So the trick is really, I think the sort of that barrier we were talking about barriers. The barrier to entry into starting your own fund is really your ability to raise capital. That's it. How quickly can you raise capital, and then how quickly can you deploy that capital into companies, because there's a life cycle on the fund and the dynamics of everything like that. So like I said, I've had friends who've been raising for several years. I've had friends who could raise millions and millions of dollars in under a year. Timing, their relationships. It's good to be friends with people who have a substantial amount of money. It's about building those relationships. When I started deploying capital, I wasn't afraid of raising capital from larger institutions. I just realized that I wasn't going to be able to quit my day job, and then go on the fundraising trail to raise capital, because you don't know how long it's actually going to take you to raise capital. So you essentially have to have money to go and raise more money, which is crazy, right? Then we get into the situation with 97% of all capital in this country, and I'm not just talking about venture capital, and certainly not just in private equity, which is actually a small amount. When we think about the trillions and trillions of dollars that are moving around in this country, 97% of all that capital is controlled by white men. It is managed. I'll use a softer word. 97% of all capital is managed by white men. And so when you think about the barriers to like be able to become an investor, right? It used to be where it was all the former bankers, right? So you go to a really great school, you know, you major in finance, you go and work on Wall Street, you know, there was this clear pathway, right? And then so there was a pattern matching that happened. So that cycle just repeated itself over and over and over and over again. And people thought, well, I can only hire ex bankers, right? It only makes sense to hire ex bankers. Never mind that they had no experience in startups. Never mind, like somehow those were the people that we should be deploying capital to make those decisions. We're seeing some cracks and some breaks. Obviously, you have people like me who don't have a, you know, my trajectory wasn't through Wall Street. So we see some shifting, but VC and private equity is actually small, like a small in the pie of the trillions. It is actually a small sliver, very small sliver in the pie. Yeah.
Yeah. Now my question becomes now is, you know, I have a goal to get everybody to 200,000 at minimum. Everybody knows about that goal.
Yep.
You know, a lot of people don't like it because they're like, hey, you're forcing people to look at the money in tech versus looking at, you know, their career and what that could be. And I'm like, no, that is your career. That should be where you want to be because of these conversations like this is why, if anyone hadn't caught on now, this is the conversations that I'm talking about, being an accredited investor. But where would you start, right? You know, like say we had 14 people that had $200,000 as for being an accredited investor, and they all had 10,000 apiece. We pull money together. I can tell you the spaces that I'm looking at. Of course, space is one. It's super huge for me.
I
And
would say like start meeting with that group weekly. You guys set aside time weekly. You open yourself up to meeting with founders, right? At different spaces, times, you start meeting and talking about, I met this founder, this is the product they're going after. And if you collectively have overlapping skill sets or interests, then that's the companies that you guys should be like leaning into, to evaluating, picking apart, right? And going, asking yourself, if I was, doing X, would this be a product that I would use? And if the majority of people say, absolutely, I need this right now, today, because it would make my job so much easier, then that tells your spidey senses should go up, right? Oh, we would all use this every day. Then, ooh, that's another thing, like ping, 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 ping. And then you go, so if someone brought that deal to the table and that founder is looking eventually to make investments or things like that, then or raise capital, then you all could essentially pool your money together and form basically an investment entity. And that investment entity, let's say it's, Women in Linux Investing Team. That's the name of the entity. You can create a bank account, an entity and a bank account. All that money goes in there. And then you decide, I want to invest in Tamika, this founder who built this great product that like 99% of us all said we would use on day one if we could buy it right now. Or we are going to buy this product right now, or we already use that product already right now. Then you sort of say, okay, where do we feel comfortable? How much money do we want to write into that company? And you say, oh, we said $50,000. Then you ship them $50,000, right, out of that entity. I think the other thing is, don't wait for a company to be out on the fundraising trail, right? You all can collect it. Let's say you meet weekly and you go, let's just talk about the things that we're already using. Right? What softwares? Let's come to the table and show what softwares we use every single day, right? Figure out where the overlap is. These are the 5 companies that we've all said we use every day. Then you should go take those 5 companies and look them up on Crunchbase, right? Look them up on Crunchbase, see how much capital they have raised, where they're at, right? Who the founders are, etc. If you guys are all excited about them, just reach out to the CEO and say, we love what you're doing. When you open up your next round or you go out to raise capital, we would love to put a check in. Works just like that.
Okay.
Literally.
You know I'm always on crunch base. You already know I'm always on
And so
crunch.
that's the other way that you can do it. You don't have to wait for someone to come to you with an idea or a company or something like that. You can say, I'm really excited about you. There's a couple of companies that, I've been really super excited about, but they're not open to additional capital or they're not raising at that time. And I just keep on being friends with them. I keep on saying, hey, how's it going? What are you doing? How do you need help? Can I introduce you to this person? Do you need help with here? Like, I'm basically inserting myself and saying I'm would be a really good partner, a really good investor, because I'm going to help you along in this journey, right? And so when they do finally open up their round, then some of the first people they're going to say is like, hey, I want, Tamika and the Women in Linux investing team to be on my cap table. Like, the founders have a lot of power to determine who can and should invest in their companies, right? And I think that all founders should be strategic in whose money they decide to take. And I think more and
Mm-hmm.
more founders are taking that and running with it and saying no to some investors and saying yes to others, pushing some investors, giving them a lower amount that they can invest in so they can make room for a Women in Linux investing group. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of thing that you want to insert yourself in. Be friends with those founders. Some of you may be in roles where you're, the engineering managers, you lead an engineering team. You get tons of salespeople calling you all the time, right? All the time, trying to sell you something, trying to do whatever. There's a product that you actually really do love. You do
Mm-hmm.
really just go to that salesperson who, sold it to you or whatever, or trying to sell something to you, and you say, I want to talk to your CEO. Can you connect me to your CEO? You'd be amazed at how many early stage companies would be like, yep, I will connect you to our CEO.
Gotcha.
And you get on the call with that CEO and say, I just really love what you're doing. What's on your product roadmap? What are you doing next? What will you do
Mm-hmm.
next? And then you start that engage in that dialogue and building that partnership. And then you could say, and at some point, not maybe in that conversation, but at some point building that relationship with that founder, you can say, yo, I believe in you all a lot. And I believe that I have a group of people that once you raise additional capital, we would love to come and invest. Will you make room for us when that happens? A lot of them would just say, yeah, of course.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's what I've seen.
Throw
Um,
those elbows. Throw those
yeah,
elbows.
networking. Yeah, man. That's what I've seen
Push
most
your
of the
way
time.
through, because guess what? The majority, the people who are in the majority who control this space, they absolutely do that. It is not just handed to them. Some of the
Mm-hmm.
hottest deals they're jockeying over, right? And a lot of times the founders are going to make decisions based on who they think is just going to be a pain in their, you know what, or
Mm-hmm.
someone who's really going to roll up their sleeves and dig in and help them, whether it's proselytizing, whether it's, talking great things about them, even just as small as tweeting about them, or, just all those kinds of things. And so then you say, well, if that's our expertise, then you invite that CEO to the next live with Women in Linux, and you
Mm-hmm.
build up that rapport in that community. And then, people start saying, wow, I didn't know you all existed. I think the biggest thing that what I found in the work that I've been doing over the last several years is that a lot of the incumbents in this space didn't realize that there were Black people, Black women, people of color who were interested in investing, right? That could pull capital together and make wise and smart investments. They just admittedly say, I don't know. I didn't know that you all existed. Right. And once they know that we exist and that we're deeply interested in this work, then they will make room. And not all of them, but many of them will make room for us.
Yep.
Just got to ask.
So we're gonna drop the link for questions, but I have one more question. Is tell us about your fund and what you're doing. Well, we know what you're doing, but tell us more about it. In terms of um, where you're headed.
Yeah, so there's a couple of really exciting things that I'm a part of. And I think no matter what what I end up doing, I'll always be knee deep in this stuff. So one thing that I'm a part of is something called the Cap Table Coalition. And there's a website, Tamika, you can drop. The Cap Table Coalition was an organization that basically, in a grassroots way, we banded together and we said, there's just not enough Black and brown people and other marginalized groups on the cap tables of really ambitious, amazing, fast growing companies. And if given the opportunity, meaning getting access to their investment deals, if we were given the opportunity, we would be able to invest. So I'm on the investment committee of the Cap Table Coalition. We have over the last 100 or so days, or a little over 100 days, have invested about $16 million into about 13 companies. We are, a motley crew of people who are, engineers, there's executives, there's angel investors, there's a bunch of companies, definitely different industries that everyone comes in. And so you can go to the Cap Table Coalition website and you can, say that you want to be sign up to be a part of the investor community. We send out a couple of deals probably a month where you will get sort of like a high level understanding of the company, their deck, and any other information, the dynamics of around that round. And then what we typically do is we have like a fireside chat, or whatever you want to call it, a fireside chat or a webinar with the founder. We spend about an hour talking about the company. There's time for Q&A. And then what we do in the background is then, of those people who are interested, we pull that money into the Cap Table Coalition SPV, which is a special purpose vehicle, which is a structure to be able to invest. And so you would be an investor into the Cap Table Coalition dash Synctera deal, right? Synctera being the specific company. You would be an investor in that SPV, and then that SPV, Cap Table Coalition Series Synctera, goes on the Synctera cap table. So I'm deeply involved in that work. We need to update because we definitely invested in more companies than the ones that you see there now. So I'm a part of that. Prior to the Cap Table Coalition, I had also started, like I said, making some pooling capital and making investments, and through my own entity, Tama Capital, and you see that as a part of the community members here on the Cap Table Coalition. I privately raised capital from a number of people into certain deals, and I created SPVs for several different companies that we invested in. Wrong one, TAMAA. So Tama, TAMAA, means ambition in Swahili. And I figure that what we want to do, and certainly I believe that I am ambitious, because Lord knows, like, none of this stuff.
Which one are you?
No, you're doing two M's. It's two A's at the end.
Oh, okay.
A. Yep. There you
Gotcha.
go. So
That's you.
probably, I don't even know if it's tamacapital.com.
Okay.
It's probably not indexed, but so I have formed that entity, and I've made, investments out of Tama Capital as well. And then, so I'm the GP of there, and that's just, deal flow that I get access to. And then, what I did join recently is a new fund. And that new fund is still under wraps and in sort of, in secrecy, but I am making investments out of that new entity and fund. Where I didn't, I've told you all earlier, oftentimes when you're creating your own fund, you have to raise capital. You have to go on the fundraising trail. By joining this new fund, I don't have to raise capital. The capital is already there for me to start deploying. So I take part in Cap Table Coalition. I may continue to invest in some deal flow through Tama Capital, but I've also recently joined as a GP in a new fund. So that's where I'm at now.
All right.
Yeah.
I hope everybody write stuff down. Did y'all write, like, again? I told you it was bringing doing investments and so forth. Did y'all write stuff down? Did you write questions? Now you understand why I keep talking about salaries, getting to the 200K mark. If you don't already have a million in assets, if you're not already married and making 300K, by the way, the time, I don't know if you all saw this, time came out this week. Everybody's been talking about it, that 62% of black women are single, 59% of black men are single. So if 62% of us are single, you already know what that means. We got to pull our money together. We're gonna have to support each other, or do
Yeah,
whatever.
I think the idea of like pooling, getting together, maybe monthly, even not even weekly, but just looking at, like I said, starting with the companies that you guys, products that you already use, figuring out, are they a private company? Are they a public company? Are they so if they're a public company, you believe in them and there's still room to grow, then you probably should buy stock in that company on the public
Hmm.
market, right? If it's a private company, figure out on Crunchbase, you know, how much capital they've raised, who they've raised capital from, what stage are they at, right? Can you
I
reach
would be
out to
doing quantum. I would be investing in quantum.
But I
Because that's
did that with my
them? Is
cousins. I
quantum
would.
public? Is quantum public or
no, no,
private?
no. Quantum meaning like quantum computing.
Oh,
So,
anything that's related to quantum computing.
yeah,
Yeah.
Exactly. So
yeah,
there you
yeah.
have
Because it's
it.
only 721 million invested this year. But like you say, IBM and Raytheon are getting together to make a push for quantum and artificial intelligence and um, blockchain. So that's super huge, and there's five startups in that particular space that people are looking at. But because of that, that gets into edge computing and robotics.
Mm,
So that's what, along those three lines right there, are where I would be pushing. The other push that I would be making, again, like I said, is space, but that's only because I talked about it earlier. There's a mission from NASA to go to Mars, to put people on Mars, and also Wi-Fi. But then there's also a play to, not Mars, but to the moon. But then there's a play to push people from the moon to Mars. So
mm.
what does the satellite communications look like? So things that come up to me is Rocket Labs comes up. Anything centered around satellites. The company that's over in Cape Canaveral that I showed last week will be a great company. They're only in a Series A. And
Relativity Space is another company that I think people should look at as well. They're based
rel-
here in Long Beach.
okay,
Hmm.
relatively space.
Relativity Space.
Okay, what do they do?
They build micro satellites,
Yep,
much smaller,
yep,
faster,
yeah.
smarter.
That's the same thing with Rocket Labs. They're doing
Hmm.
the same thing. They launched 32,000 satellites. They're all Linux based.
Wow.
Same thing with Starlink as well too,
Mhm.
when we're talking about that. But the company Space Perspective, they're over in Cape Canaveral. They're launching air balloons to go to the stratosphere
Mhm.
to showcase basically what does the Earth and the world looks like is at that level. They've sold 475 seats at 125,000 a
Mm.
piece for those seats, and they're already sold out. And they're getting more. What comes to mind for me, and we're gonna see this, is people are gonna buy those seats to have to say, I proposed to my girlfriend in space. In the stratosphere is nothing for but up from here for us. There are gonna be parties. There's gonna be a need for people to, again, live in an era of Instagram and showcase. So I wouldn't be surprised if people uh are starting to, look at that as a way to say, I proposed, or I had a party, or I did my photo shoot in space, check out my background and so forth. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you have a question. Mario says Carter is at a Series F. It's a Series F company. Can you elaborate on this scale or meaning?
Yeah, so Carta actually is at Series G now. They're actually beyond F. I think they've raised over $1 billion uh, in about 15 or so or 17 or so rounds. You know, it literally means, again, I don't know the dynamics of each round because that's not public. What was the valuation as it went from C to G, right? So what that means to me is that people are still pouring money into it because they still believe that they have room to grow, right? And that the valuation exceeds the amount of money that has been put into it, right? That is what we would want, right? So I would imagine that the valuation post money is anywhere between 1 and 10 billion. They think it's probably anywhere between $1 and $10 billion valuation. So
Yep.
does Carta go public? Does Carta get acquired by someone? I don't know. I think I had wanted to try to get a part of the Carta, the deal. It's just super high, and then that at that point, like you're super late, right? So depending on the valuation that the valuation at the time that I would have had access to, like how much room did I believe they still had to grow, right? From that point, right? So if I invested in at the $6 billion valuation or the $7 billion valuation, then what more room do they have once they go public or they raise another round, which again would just be on my return would only be on paper. So it just, what in terms of what it means that people and investors still believe that there's room to grow for that company and that they need more capital to actually build more products. So one thing is Carta wasn't doing, but Carta started leaning into the SPV space and the fund administrator space. I had been using a company Flow and another company to help with fund administration. Carta saw that as a space that was happening, and so that was growing, and so they have now created their own SPV and fund administrative platform as well. So that all these fintech like services they're really good at. And so if you think about just like scale and meaning, means that people want to give them more money so they can continue to grow and dominate, hire more engineers, top quality engineers. So going back to Tamika's point, like this is not just about making money. I think it's what is the value of people who have these skill sets. And so do you undervalue yourself? Right? If everybody else around you on average is making X number of dollars and you're not making that, then why is that? Right? So I think there's an important piece to, obviously there's an important piece of the private money going into private companies so that they can continue to scale and grow. And typically, most of us want you to build and spend money and pour money into engineering. We like it when you put more money into engineering than into marketing, but we know that you can spend a ton of money in marketing as well. But again, it just means that you don't want the company to fail. You want to give them more money to actually grow their team, their sales team, their marketing, their engineering team, and so that they can be a rocket ship.
And Mario asked you who were their competitors.
Competitors of Carta, like it depends, right? Because now they're like branching off into all these different spaces. In the SPV formation space, there's a company by the name of Flow. There's a company by the name of Allocations. There's a company Assure is doing this as well. Certainly, guess what? The elephant in the room is certainly AngelList. AngelList, you can do investments through AngelList, or what they call syndicates, is essentially the same thing. But those are some of those people that are specifically solely into the SPV space. Now, when you think about Carta, they are also managing cap table. They can manage your cap table now as well and provide those types of things. They can also manage your stock and that you're issuing to employees as well, and signing all those documents. So anyone who's in that vertical would be a competitor to Carta. Anyone who's in the vertical of SPV is going to be a competitor of Carta. So they've sort of splintered and have a bunch of like services now. So, and they're going after a lot of different spaces now, where like Flow is just right now SPVs. They're not doing anything else, right? But arguably you'd say, well, Carta has a better chance to make it, even though they started off with the like employee, stock options and stuff like that, right? But they're growing, they're doing more. So that's,
I use Carta.
Yeah.
We use Carta at work.
Yeah. And then, so the thing is that I like the interesting thing, like, so if I've invested in a company through an SPV, right, and that company uses Carta, then what will show up in my account when I log into Carta is not only the stock that I've been issued from the companies that I worked with who have all of their employee stock options on utilizing Carta, but then I can see this investment that I've made through an SPV, because that company also issues those stocks or that portion of the equity that you purchase through that investment through Carta as well. So it's a kind of like, I get to see a bunch of things, but not all the companies that I've invested use Carta, right? So, and not all the companies that you may work for now or eventually work will use Carta. But there's the benefit of being able to log in and see a lot of that. And so you can think about, from a market share standpoint, if they can straddle both worlds, then it looks really good.
Now, we thank you for all of that. I think Cisco 5 said Pulley. I think I'm assuming that's one of the competitors that you were talking about.
Probably. I don't know all the competitors and specifically across all the verticals that Carta, is in, but I know more of the competitors that they have in the product that they are doing in the SPV space.
Did anybody backstage?
No, we don't have anybody backstage.
Uh-oh, Kiana, you made them, you scared them.
Oh no. I hope that I scared them into looking at some of their the products that they buy, the services that they use a lot, or they're planning and plotting behind right now, Tamika, to get you to form an investment group.
I've always been talking about it. I have already been talking about it. An investment group, rolling women in Linux into a trust fund. What does that look like? Again, not taking a percentage.
One company that you guys should look at, just interesting as you talk about obviously wealth creation and generating wealth. You guys should look at Alto. Alto is a really interesting company as well. It allows you to roll over your IRA to them, and then you can invest in alternative investments, private companies, crypto, and other things with Alto. ALTO, I believe, is the spelling of that name.
Is the one out of Australia?
Is it?
That's what I'm pulling up. It looks like it's a pharmacy something.
No.
No, this one is
also the website is Alta IRA. Alta IRA. Mm-hmm. Yep. So you can roll over your IRA to them, and then you can basically find alternative investments for your portfolio.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And rolling it over to Alto won't get you hit on the back end with the IRS?
No, okay. You can roll over your IRA wherever you want to roll it over to, right? So you with E-Trade, but then you decide to, even if you decide to roll over your 401k to something, you can do that, and you're not hit with any, because you're not cashing it out.
Right. And also where you roll it over to, because I know for me, I rolled my one of my IRAs over to ground floor, and because it was real estate, I wasn't going to get hit with any fees.
Mm.
But with that, because I withdrew from my 401k before, if you just going to spend it, you get hit with the
No, yeah,
10%.
this is different. This is like just rolling it over into another tax,
Mhm.
shelter essentially, right? And so, yeah, you guys can look at Alta IRA. That might be interesting as another sort of way. Again, you don't have to be an accredited investor. This is an IRA that you already have, likely have, so you can roll it over into Alto, and then you can, because with your traditional IRA, you're only going to be able to invest in the public stuff, right?
Mhm.
Like what they
But
have it in. Yeah.
also you can invest in these other things and you're not going to be hit with the tax stuff. So yeah, that's something you guys should look at as well.
Thank you.
You
I
want to
will
sort of
post
look at
this.
alternative investments.
Yep. No, I don't think we have any other questions now. I'm making sure. D, you didn't have any. I'm looking through. I know somebody asked about how long is the Linux course earlier, and I was like, we're not on Linux right now. But if you join the Slack group, you can join the Slack channel, the RHCSA channel. That's where it's at. And the class is posted in there. It How long does it take you to learn? As long as you need to take, right? That's just really the answer on anything. How much time and effort are you going to put into anything? It's going to be the thing. Uh, Code and Evelyn, the link right above is what the link is for what we just talked about. Alto IRA, it's right above that, right above your comment.
ALTO.
Yep,
I
yep,
mean, this was an amazing chat because it was even though investments were the bulk of it, it was so many gems to get out of it that you don't have to have a whole lot of money to start to be an investor. Um, you can bloom where you're planted. You don't have to, if you have education as your background and you've been a teacher, bloom where you're planted. Stick with what you know, your expertise, and pivot within that. And you can go into, like I tell people all the time, I was like, if I'm a business consultant and I know business, I can go in any industry with that.
yep.
Like, it's expanding your mind. Don't be afraid to go and learn and be excited to learn. Like, it's okay. Because we had maybe an episode back the week before last. Some people were feeling um, judged by their coworkers for talking about learning something new, because you have work friends and you're like, oh, I'm thinking about this, and work friends are like getting really frenzied, like, are you thinking about leaving? No, I'm just looking at some other stuff. Like, I'm just not this one person. I'm multifaceted and I'm learning something new because it excites me. Don't It's not, it's okay to be excited to learn something new, to go
Now,
dig in, to find out about it, to ask questions about it, to go find your tribe that is doing more in that particular realm, that space, that ecosystem, um, your community, your family. Like, being an investor, I was saying before that my cousins, I told them, I said, hey, it's five of us, first cousins. Let's put in the pot $5,000 a piece. It's $25,000 for us to go do something with. It could be that easy or it could be that hard, but it doesn't have to be your starting point
Yeah.
for being an investor. Um, it's a lot of ways you can get in it to tip your toe in the pond, but we do start something.
You all are investors because right now what you're doing is investing in yourselves by being here on a Saturday morning or
yep,
afternoon. This is a form of investing. We are
yep,
investing in ourselves to build and be a part of a community that is deeply values and respects and leans into not making and putting up too many barriers to access this really great information. So see yourselves already as an investor. First,
Yeah,
you have to invest in yourself before you can invest in anyone else. What they tell us on the plane is that put your mask on first before you put the mask on anyone else.
yeah,
So
hmm,
this is what you all are doing.
yeah.
yep,
That's what
and
Kelsey said last week when we had him on the show. He's like, invest in yourself
Mm-hmm.
yep,
first.
yep. And then the other part, too is, um, you and I talk about this all the time. You know, when we look across the landscape, like who's at the table, who's in the rooms, who's making decisions, and where those decisions being made at, and what influences us. I want us to be able to get to the other side of the table where we're
Right.
looking at people and we're making decisions about where they where their careers are going and what that trajectory looks like,
Right.
and building our own companies as well too. That's what I would like. So also, don't forget to drop, if you feel like it, if you want to, how people can find you on social media. I know you're active on Twitter. I don't think you're as active on LinkedIn as you are on Twitter.
Who, me?
Mm-hmm.
I started slowing down just because I got really busy on LinkedIn, but you'll probably start seeing me a bit more. I'm active on both LinkedIn and on Twitter.
Got you. And this is by your first and last name on both platforms.
On LinkedIn, yep, my first and last name. On Twitter, it's Kiana, but it's a QIANA, but it's an underscore under each letter. I don't know if Tamika or D, you can add it in here. I can't add to the comments, but yeah.
Yep, yep. Yeah, D has it all. D know how to do that.
Hmm.
All right. So now I don't think we got any other questions. I know you've been on here. It's early for you. I know you probably need a nap.
You know, she is up. She drinks her juices. She works out. Kiana is
Like,
SoCal. She's ready for the day.
are you cooking today?
I have another 2 o'clock call, so I'm gonna like do a workout, quick workout in between the two. I'm talking to a attorney out of a very very it's actually international law firm that built a sort of a program for Black entrepreneurs, and so they're trying to pull me into the mix with this law firm. So yeah, I have a 2 o'clock call with her.
Okay, so no
Nice.
cooking.
I am
So
gonna cook tomorrow, probably
Oh,
not today.
she's an exquisite chef. I
oh
can't
yeah,
wait
she
to go to
takes
LA so she
pictures.
can make us meals.
I'll be out. I'll be out your way soon. So I'll
Yep,
be in Boulder. So I'll
make your way over here.
yep, yep, yep,
You
yep.
got the room here with the Peloton staring
Oh, good. That's fine. We can
at
stare. Let's just play.
you.
I'll use it. All right, we appreciate you and everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
for
so
hanging out with
much.
us. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your knowledge, and also I hope you all got good feedback. Feedback to notes, Princess C. I can't wait to see your notes when you post them in Slack. And as well, make sure you all follow her on everything that she's doing. Again, here we are back at Accredited Investors. I show you the companies that are startups or just what people are thinking about. So here you go. Make your investments. Hope to see everybody soon. Hope we can spend some time together in person one day. One day.
So,
Yeah. So we'll catch you all later.
alrighty. Thank you, Kiana.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.